Good evening. This is Sudhir Mishra, and we are doing the third edition of Sudhir Mishra Show with Mr. Parag P Tripathi, Senior Advocate, Supreme Court of India. This is a very special show because it's not easy to talk to somebody like Mr. Tripathi, who is so accomplished, who has achieved so much, and who has to give so much to the society, to the legal profession. To introduce him is something which is very difficult for me to summarize in few paras. What I'll do this journey with him. In this talk, you'll realize what makes him truly exceptional. A first generation lawyer, a self-built lawyer who has really broken all glass ceiling and who is not only known for his legal acumen, but also known for his generosity, for humor, and for his excellence in issues beyond legal profession. I welcome Mr. Parag P Tripathi to third edition of Sudhir Mishra Show. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
And before, sir, I want you to say anything. Let me tell you, John Elia talked about himself and it applies to you. मैं जो हूं, जॉन इलिया हूं जनाब, इसका बेहद लिहाज कीजिएगा. I have always learned this in last 20 years from you, how to take yourself seriously, but also not be contemptuous or arrogant. That really speaks about your personality. All your colleagues, I won't call them juniors, who have for last 30 years have passed through your hand and who are making their mark in legal profession, have one thing to say, that it's beyond legal profession what they have learned from you, how to live your life. So I'll just tell for everybody, because thousands of people are watching this, young law students, lawyers, even judges. You topped Sardar Patel School in 1976, 84%. B Honors Economics 1979, 68%. You again topped the university. Campus Law Center Gold Medalist 1982, and then INLAC Scholarship, and you go to Harvard Law School. Come back and start your practice in 1983. Sir, for a person who was educated under a tree, never got more than 60% ever in his life, this is not easy to interview you or to take any lessons of life from you. Just tell your journey. What was it like in 1980s or 1970s when we were growing up?
I was growing up in a professor's house, and I'm very proud of that. My father was a very distinguished professor. My mother was a medical doctor. And the two things we learned was that academic success is relevant only up to a point. It's one of the several parameters of any human life, and it is very easy to exaggerate it. There's nothing in it really, other than the joy of the moment. It's like you eat a good meal, you are happy, and then you move on. So academic success is like that. It doesn't really, in the long run, it's a good feeling. It's a feel-good factor. With it, we learn the desire to think on our feet, to have our own views, and to debate incessantly and continuously, much to the annoyance of my relatives on both my father's and mother's side. Everything on the dining table was up for grabs as far as objections or counterpoints was concerned. Nothing was considered taboo. So these were the two things which we learned, that academics are important, but they're just a means to an end, nothing more. Don't set to score anything more than that. And two, question everything. It is when you question everything that you grow. If you accept without questioning, then you cannot grow. And the third thing which I have learned, which is to what you alluded, is that pamper people who are good around you and pamper yourself the most. Because there is nobody else who has the inclination or the ability to pamper you like the way you can pamper yourself. But pampering doesn't mean doing anything wrong. Pampering means be kind. Be kind to others who are around you, be generous to them, and most of all, be kind and generous to yourself.
तो फिराक गोरखपुरी ने आपके लिए ही कहा होगा, मैं ये माना जिंदगी है 4 दिन की, बहुत होते हैं यारो 4 दिन भी.
बहुत होते हैं यार 4 दिन.
You always said, sir, and let me tell you, not to, of course, people know Parag Tripathi. I was fortunate in Campus Law Center in 1995-96 when I was doing my law to hear your father in a Constitutional Law Society lecture. Honestly, sir, I was not knowing about you. I had not met you. I never interned on anybody. And he was mesmerizing. So later I went to Professor MP Singh, who was our dean, and I asked him that what is this? What just happened for 45 to 50 minutes? He was absolutely stunning how the constitution functions in this country and what happens. I never told you this in ever any interaction, but me and Mr. Rajkumar, who is the Vice Chancellor of Jindal University, we were amongst few people who kept on talking about it for many, many months and years. You had a lot of competition at home itself. You were the single child, but you were born in a family of achievers. You were extremely close to your father and mother. You were having a kind of relationship which any mother should be proud of. What do you have their memories, sir?
My memories of my parents, above all, is again twofold. One is great exemplars of how one should be, who followed the famous dictum of liberal Western philosophy, which was also liberal Indian philosophy, till somewhere about 1500 years back, we sort of lost our way and we have found it back again. Yeah. That is to think as you will and to speak as you think. That is really the essence of freedom. So one memory is of them as an exemplar, and the other memory is of both my parents as friends. So since I was the only child, I had that privilege of treating them and discussing with them, fighting with them as well, as friends would.
And sir, when you finished your law, you had a Harvard education. You could have started thinking about settling in United States or doing something internationally. What was the reason for you coming back to India in 1983, 84? That's a time where there was no Manmohan Singh, there was no B.V. Narasimha Rao, no economic liberalization. What was so promising about India in 1983?
You see, my view is America is a great society. Like all societies which are successful, all societies which are successful have an element of greatness. So does America. It also has its problems. But the overwhelming aspect of American society is that it's a society meant for young people. So life is wonderful when you're young. In India, as you grow older, at least those days, life would become better for you. Why I came back to India, I think it's a very personal choice. I don't think there was any great element of patriotism per se.
Right.
But there was an element of familiarity, of being with friends, with family members, with parents, which I intuitively knew that if I settled in US, would not happen. And I valued that nearness, physical nearness. And besides, I think in 1984, you're right, India was not anywhere near liberalization, though China was, after the Kissinger visit in 71 to China. But likewise in America, for Indians, the glass ceiling was very low. So there was no question of having somebody who would become a CEO or somebody who would be accepted. So foreigners in general, Indians in particular, were limited basically to middle-rung management jobs or middle-rung placements in law firms.
Yes. So you arrive in India and you join a law firm.
Yes.
Which I understand, I think, for a very short span of time.
No, it was very valuable.
And there were very few law firms at that time, sir. And you did join a law firm. And tell us, look, the youngsters today have the biggest issue of what do we do? If they are into litigation, they don't want to wait for a big success. If they are into a law firm culture, they have an issue with regard to the toxicity of it for many reasons. So when you started thinking about legal profession, being a legal practitioner, even if you joined a firm and later you joined the present attorney general of the country, what was going on in your mind? What was your plan of action at that?
See, the plan of action was to try and excel as a lawyer. I joined Khaitan and Company, which was one of the top law firms then. It's quite a reputed law firm now as well. Then I had a small stint with late Mr. S.P. Agarwal, a senior advocate in the High Court, who had a lot of original side work and great experience. And of course, then I joined the present Attorney General, Mr. K.K. Venugopal, which is, of course, a different experience altogether. What would be my advice to youngsters? Sudhir, you have to remember, when we joined the profession, it was presumed that you have those 3 stages in a lawyer's life. Remember that famous story everybody has heard. All work and no money, a lot of work and little money, and no work and all money, right? The options are also very limited. So one basically got into it with the belief that for the next 5 years, I'm not looking at my bank balance. And I'm only focusing on work and seeing how things go from there. It won't be fair to put the youngsters today in that position. Because if you want good people to come to litigation, you have to make a system which is conducive, which will make it worth their while monetarily. They will do a sacrifice compared to going to a top law firm, going to a single advocate or a senior advocate's chamber. But that can't be stretched too far because they also have aspirations.
Yes.
Therefore, I understand, you're right, there is a toxicity of competition in law firms, surely. Sometimes it's there even in a senior's chamber. Yes. And there is that big gestation period. It is a long lead gestation before which you really start earning. But then that's life. You have to give some and take some.
Yes. So I remember meeting you for the first time in Punjabi Bagh. You were staying with your father. Now that's a privilege. Very few get that. And you were staying with your father. You proudly said that also at that time.
He tolerated me.
He tolerated you. But the fact is, whatever commercial success, and I have always learned from you that commercial success is just a byproduct.
Absolutely.
Commercial success is a byproduct. Now tell me, you had a very long, sustained inning with the present Attorney General, Mr. K.K. Venugopal. What are the 3 things which you really want this young generation to learn from him, which you learned as a first generation lawyer, sir?
Yes. But before that, I'm reminded of a couplet of Ghalib.
Yes, that was weighted now. Yeah.
Since I was counting the score, you're already 2-0 up on me. For young lawyers, particularly.
Yes, sir.
बस की दुश्वार है हर काम का आसान होना, आदमी को भी मयस्सर नहीं इंसान होना. So many times as a young lawyer, you feel that everything which I'm trying to do, why is it so difficult for me? Why is it so much easier for others? And why aren't the others around me more of insan? Why are they so toxic towards me, so indifferent towards me? But that's all right. As it's a long marathon race, as you cross the first 5 kilometers, you start coming to your own. By the time you reach 15 kilometers, you are noted. By the time you're 25, you're there. And then up to 42 kilometers is just you who's there. So you have to, patience is a very important thing.
Yes.
Which you have to learn. I learned so many things in Mr. Venugopal's chamber. I learned the art of hard, relentless work, the art of focusing on your arguments. What is it that you're going to argue and how? And of course, integrity. I learned it got re-emphasized because I studied in Sardar Patel Vidyalaya. We had 2 principals who were husband and wife, Raghubai and Jashiben Naik. They were freedom fighters and they always told us about values and virtues. And we used to get a little hassle because it was quite hot outside, standing there and listening to this long speech of 12 minutes. But like it sort of gets drilled into your conscience and it doesn't come out. So it remains there, embedded. And then, of course, I was the son of a professor. My mom was a doctor. So idealism was a part of the menu which was there for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And of course, it got re emphasized and put beyond redeem and beyond relief in Mr. Venugopal's chambers, because those are the things you learn in a great chamber. So many, many things which you take for granted come automatically to you if you work in a chamber, if you're fortunate enough to work in such a chamber. Certainly.
Sir, one of the ideas for this show was that people like you who are not very media savvy, who are not very keen to come in the media, and you have followed the integrity part, which you have just said. But upgrade and skilling up is such a big issue with any profession today.
Oh, yes.
Skilling up and upgrading your knowledge, or being there, or knowing, is my path correct or not? Sir, I remember that 1999, I got married, and my wife Mamta Tiwari was working with you, and I met you because of her, and you actually mentored me a lot. But all that nicety used to vanish around 8:30 p.m. when you will tell me that I want this draft tonight. And I will say that abhi tak to bahut achhe the. Abhi tak we just had tikki and something like that. So what suddenly happened, because you were absolutely merciless so far as a target or a research or a proposition of law is concerned. And let me tell you, sir, that's the only part which really took people like me to some kind of solidity, and which really defined the journey. So what was your training method for all those people who worked with you when you came out on your own? And I can tell you, I have many things to share, what your juniors have said. I won't call them juniors, your colleagues have said they are senior advocates, and they have excelled like anything, and they have amazing things to share. And this was my own example. What was in your mind? You were absolutely nice, you were absolutely good, but you were very firm on your training.
Yes, because ultimately, Sudhir, you have to deliver. This is a profession where you have to deliver. It's like, it's very simple. It's like, say, a tennis player, he has to keep on winning. Here you have an advantage. It's not necessary that you should keep on winning. But even when you lose, the people who brief you or your client should feel that, well, he did whatever best he could do.
Yeah.
Because if you miss on that, then you start a downhill. And this is a profession where there is nothing called remaining on the plateau. Either you're going up by and large, or you're going down. It's not that you've reached a plateau and you're just staying put there. Therefore, you have to deliver. That's as simple as that.
So, sir, I'll just tell you, one of the teachings which people remember is your insistence on propositions. You always talked about that when you research, you should have the same degree of confidence and mirror judgments when you are arguing before the judge with a particular line of argument. You should have supporting judgment, and you were very categorical about your proposition. And another thing which you were very keen was the background of the matter. How do you also understand the overall situation, why a issue has arisen? People actually see the entire litigation or a particular court issue in a very narrow perspective. What is that differentiator which most of your colleagues have talked about?
You see, when I was doing my LLM, there was a wonderful lady from England who was with us. And she was at the Harvard Law School. She was about almost 10 years senior to us. And she made a very good observation. She said, look, law is a continuous movement from the microscope to the telescope. So you have to have the complete picture, and where needed, you have to go down, deep down on that one proposition with law. So that is really what litigation is about. And even when you're arguing intricate constitutional law questions, there is an element of a storytelling to it.
Yes.
It's not a standard story, Ek tha Raja, Ek thi Rani, not that. But it's a constitutional story where your arguments have to fit into gross common sense. It is sometimes said in ridicule, law is an ass. Not really. Not really. You have to win not only the point of law, but you have to win the conscience of the court to feel, yes, this is the only way, which is the correct way. And it's a continuous endeavor. It's
Yeah,
good to know the principle. It's the application which is the problem.
absolutely. And so one common thing which has come out is that very few lawyers in India, particularly in any of the high courts or the Supreme Court, understand the role of humor. And you are particularly highlighted. Many lawyers have told us, and many lawyers have talked about it, and it's very natural to you. Humor in your normal life, also, we all are aware, people who had the opportunity to know you closely. But even if there is a hard nosed battle going on in a court where both the sides are very tense about it, and you will crack up with a British humor or something very refined humor. What is the role of just being little loosened out or just being little light about the entire thing? Because we are normally, सब हमसे नफरत करते हैं सर, कई लोग डरते हैं वकीलों से, जुडिशरी से, and you make it very different, sir. What is the role of humor for you?
I agree with you, Sudhir. Humor is a very important part of culture.
पर इसको cultivate कैसे करेगा कोई?
You have to not only cultivate it, and humor has to be self-deprecating. That's again one of the things I learned from my parents. It's very easy to crack a joke at the expense of somebody else. Real humor is when you crack something on yourself, or you say something which fits into the situation. In a courtroom, if you go back 20, 30 years, there were great exemplars who would this is not, this wouldn't be humor which will make you roar in laughter, but humor which would lighten the mood and still put forth your point, because that's the important point. Unfortunately, today in some courtrooms, some of our friends who are very good lawyers try to substitute advocacy and humor with high decibel advocacy. You know, robust masculine high decibel advocacy. Pardon my sexist expression, masculine here, but that is not needed. Humor can really open up. Supposing a judge is not with you, humor acts as a distraction, because he then laughs, and then maybe the next time you give him that point, which so far he has resisted, he may find, all right, let's see, maybe there is something in it. So humor is, I think, very important. I remember one very amazing incident. Dr. Natwar Singh, whom we all know, a great bureaucrat and a minister as well, he was from my college, St. Stephen's. And he had gone for one of the old boys reunion, and he got a little emotional. So he wrote on the visitor's book, I am what I am because of the college. So after that, another gentleman who was a student of the same college, an ex-Stephanian, says, why blame the college? Now, this is something which becomes anecdotal.
Right.
And it's not really an affront to anybody, because with humor comes the necessary requirement that you have to learn to allow others to laugh at you and join them at laughing at you. And I think our nation needs this. We are too serious. You have insulted my feelings. You have insulted my religious feelings. We have to get over that. And we have to learn to laugh at ourselves along with our friends and foes alike.
Sir, I tell you, your humor part, and I know yesterday in one of the matters, my office was briefing you, and I realized that there was some humor, role of humor I had to explain. But the fact is, even in most toughest of situations, this humor thing, and that is so natural to you, whether it's a conference or it's a friends who are there, it comes very natural to you. Let me tell you, like many of the alternative hobbies which you have, if you really consider humor also as an alternative profession, you can be humorologist, which is a big thing in America and Europe now to make people laugh. On a serious note, I'm saying this, but let me tell you, sir, there are other things which people need to know, especially whosoever is entering the legal profession or is struggling to find his feet or her feet. That what is the role of a well-rounded lawyer? Like what we learn from you, you have enough time. Your work-life balance is such that you have enough time for your Urdu, You have enough time for your shairi. You have enough time for your wine testing. You have enough time for your coin collection. You have enough time for your historical tours, your morning tours to see Humayun's tomb. How do you manage your time? How do you really, are you really, do you plot it well? And I'm not even talking about food, which will come in the last segment.
I plotted very badly. I wish I could plot it well. I agree with you. I do have these hobbies, and I love these hobbies. I have several very dear friends who are firmly of the view that I have a grasshopper mind which will go from one hobby to the other and move on. But that's not true, really, except probably golf, which I did for about 10 years and then dropped. Each one of the others has lived on with me. And I think there's a beautiful story of the Stanford University and the very young vice chancellor who had this set of books on Western philosophy. Unfortunately, the West only considers Western philosophy. That's their problem, because our Eastern philosophy is as great, if not greater. But anyway, those books are the books of knowledge on Western philosophy. And what they require in Stanford, I believe that is so even now, for their graduation, is that you do a course on that, so that you become, as you said, well-rounded, a complete human being. Because just having a focused tunnel vision in one profession alone will not help you grow in the manner which you must if you have to really flower as an individual. So yes, coins, wines, and it's not coin collection. It's, you see, every coin has a history. So there is a beautiful coin which very few people would know, of Emperor Muhammad Jalaluddin Akbar. And can you guess, a Muslim ruler of India in his official coin having the portrait of Bhagwan Ram and Sita? How many people know this? What an extraordinary fellow.
Absolutely, sir.
Unthinkable.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, there are very few such coins. There is one in Banaras and one in the British Museum. So each coin has that history. Unfortunately, in India, people don't collect coins. We have our very dear friends who collect beautiful watches and cars and everything. But coins is something which is linked with India's history, like the two coronations of Shivaji. One of them had coins, the other coins are all gone. The great coronation of 30,000 gold coins of Krishna Dev Raya. These are such beautiful stories linked with each one of them.
Wonderful. Sir, I just want to do one more, with your permission, John Elia.
It's going to be 3-1 now. Yes.
So, born in India, Pakistan's best known Jim Morrison kind of शायर.
Yes.
हम हसीन तरीन, अमीर तरीन, जहीन तरीन, और जिंदगी में हर हवाले से बेहतरीन होकर भी बिल आखिर मर ही जाएंगे.
How beautiful. Yes.
So you actually charitarth that. You actually live that life, that you know that yes, this is, and you don't compartmentalize. I remember, and many of your friends have said that you have time for everybody. If I had COVID, you had time to talk to me that how do I come out of it and I should not go down. So this is the story of most of the people in the legal profession. And that's what I want to tell, that this work-life balance is a misconception. And the last segment, sir, which I want to ask you is, with regard to your food, your love for refined, nice food. Both of us share the same passion. I was not refined, but after meeting you and knowing your involvement with food and the kind of research you do on that, because that you do for any aspect, you will not do it half measure. That's what also somebody said to me. What is your relationship with food? We have distracted you many times on food just to get out of a tough situation.
See, food goes along with wines as completing a good human life experience. But if you get behind the food and figure out why is it that a particular food is what it is, how was it made, just as you would do with a great wine, then it takes you to a different level. Because India's culture is so rich that every single food product or food preparation has a history to it. Yeah. Everybody's heard of those Gilavati kebabs. That is the or the kakori kebabs, where there is a mythical story. According to some, it's a completely mythical story created by the top thinkers of ITC to make it sellable. That the Nawabs were toothless and they wanted a kebab which could be chewed without having teeth. Now, we did a lot of research on that, and there is something to be said that that wasn't known to the Nawabs for sure. So that was created perhaps by ITC. If they did, it's a great thing they created. So, but with it, I think you have to have a philosophical complement as well. So India's Bhakti movement, India's Sufi movement, that also complements it. And I remember a very short story where this city dweller goes to this Sufi who is in this big room where there's nothing in it. And he says, "What, bhai, you don't have any furniture here?" He says, "What about your furniture?" He says, "Well, I'm only a visitor." So the Sufi smiles and tells him, "So am I."
Wow.
There's so much to be said on that.
Yes. So, sir, we are at the end of this program. I just want to share Tahzeeb Hafi, we have discussed many times in the Pakistan's big sensation. I think you'll love this, and you will, of course, after this, recite one couplet for us. तेरा चुप रहना मेरे जेहन में क्या बैठ गया.
वाह.
तेरा चुप रहना मेरे जेहन में क्या बैठ गया. इतनी आवाजें तुझे दी कि गला बैठ गया. यूं नहीं कि फकत मैं ही उसे चाहता हूं. जो भी उस पेड़ की छांव में गया बैठ गया. So, sir, it was wonderful to talk to you. My daughter Aparajita and Udyan both are watching this because one day they will intern under you. And I want you to say one thing to us, maybe in a shairi, which youngsters can relate to, people like us who are fortunate to be mentored by you, a wider audience, a younger generation, how they should look at India, which is coming before them.
You know, the way forward in our profession is to follow the twin principles of hard work and integrity and stick to it. There is a very nice couplet of Dag, because Dag was always very listener friendly, simple Urdu. And he said, "Aur honge tere mehfil se ubharne wale, Hazrate Dag jidhar baith gaye, baith gaye."
Wow.
So once you have decided, you are decided.
Wow.
And you will run through it. You will run and complete the marathon. That is the principle.
Before I give it to Ashima back, sir, and there will be a video question from our editor-in-chief of Business World. I'll just ask you one naughty question, if you allow me, that you did economics honors because you wanted to be very sure about your billing in legal profession.
You know, that is also a story. I didn't want to do medicine. I didn't want to follow engineering. So my father talked to Professor Sukhmay Chakravarti, who was member planning commission. So, and he said the best place, like a genteel Bengali professor, rightly, he said the best place for a bright boy is economics honors.
Ashima, all yours. You can play the video question from Mr. Batra.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mishra, and thank you so much, Mr. Tripathi, for such rich anecdotes from all the eras we could think of. And we'll play the message and the question from Dr. Batra now.
Yeah, sure. That's the only question we have, sir.
Yeah.
What an interview with Mr. Parag Tripathi, Mr. Sudhir Mishra. You clearly brought out the best in Mr. Parag Tripathi. We knew that he's a legal eagle, he's a legal brain, but today we got to know that he's a philosopher. He talked about how in those days life used to get better. If you were older, he talked about what he does beyond his legal pursuits. So clearly you brought it to a new dimension in Mr. Parag Tripathi, and I'm looking at him in a new way. I see halo around him more than before. So my question is, Mr. Parag Tripathi, you achieved so much fame, you got so much wealth, most importantly you have respected and you're still playing. Over the next 10 years, what is your bucket list? What does Mr. Parag Tripathi wish to achieve that he hasn't achieved till now?
No, it's very kind of you to say all that. I think the bucket list of all of us is to give back to society. And we should find ways of doing it. While doing our good work as an individual for ourselves, we should also look at ways and means of giving back to society in a very small way, of course, other than donations and contributions, which is a very obvious way and it really doesn't take you far. I try and do teaching at the Jindal Global Law School. My wife joins me there. But there are so many more things we can do. And there are glorious exemplars we have in our legal profession. My former senior, for one, who has contributed so much to universities, to institutions. And I think when we lawyers sit, we shouldn't really talk about our watches and cars alone, or coins, or whatever, wines. We should talk of what we have done for the society in the last 1 year. And this is not being said as a challenge. It is being said as a self-learning experience. Because ultimately, look at the West, look at somebody like Bill Gates. Why is he putting $15 billion away? Why are the Tatas doing this? Why are the Wipro people doing this? Why can't we do that as a part of the legal profession, those of us who are successful, and then justly be proud of it? Not as a bragging right, but as accepting, as Sudhir rightly said, that as John Alia said, all of us have to go one day. So before going on that one day, let us do something which will have lasting benefit for the world. That's the bucket list.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Parag Tripathi, for this wonderful interview. We are indebted to you. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you, Sudhir. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.